بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والشكر لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. نويت التعلم والتعليم والتذكر والتذكير والنفع والانتفاع والإفادة والاستفادة والحث على التمسك بكتاب الله وسنة رسوله والدعاء إلى الهدى والدلالة على الخير ابتغاء وجه الله ومرضاته وقرب وثوابه سبحانه وتعالى. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Alhamdulillah, I'm very excited in presenting the following class, inshallah, which will be on a introduction to the sciences of Hadith, or an introduction to Hadith studies. I would like to start off by sharing a few announcements. And the first one is that I would like us to think of this class as one friend or one student of the deen sharing the information and the knowledge that is gathered over the past few years to other students of the deen and friends. So, and I would like us to frame this interaction in that way, inshallah. One friend sharing some thoughts that he believes to be helpful in approaching the studies of ahadith. The second one is that I've made some PowerPoint presentations, a slide presentation, and I hope, inshallah, to keep these slides. However, if you would like to maybe take notes or take screenshots of your screen or take photos of the slides as I go over them, and you're more than welcome to do that. And another announcement would be that and I hope that we will end at around 11 o'clock. However, if there's more people who will join the call, I would like us to go for a break from 10 to 10 till 10 past 10, inshallah. However, if not many people join the call, I think we can have the class a bit shorter without a break, maybe ending at something like 10:30, inshallah. So let me share my screen now. So an intro to the Hadith studies, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I have 33 slides with me, so let's keep that number in our minds as we go over the slides, inshallah, so that we have an idea of how close we are to the end. I would like us to start off with a hadith. For a hadith we could say hadith as the finished product of all the thought and the processes that go through within ulum al-hadith. And just as you have the idea of reverse engineering something, I would like us
I just say that again.
Yes. Oh, okay. And so just as someone can reverse engineer a car or reverse engineer a product to understand how it works internally, I would like us to start that way by looking at a particular hadith, and then we're going to reverse engineer it, or we're going to work our way backwards until we understand what are the components within a hadith and how do we tell which hadith is authentic from that which isn't authentic. So the first couple of ideas that we should know about a hadith is that a hadith has two main components. A hadith has a sanad and a hadith has a matan. The sanad of a hadith, let's put this here. The sanad of a hadith is the chain of transmission of the hadith. So it tells us, for example, over here, حدثنا الحميدي عبد الله بن الزبير قال حدثنا سفيان قال حدثنا يحيى بن سعيد الأنصاري قال أخبرني محمد بن إبراهيم التيمي أنه سمع علقمة وقاص الليثي يقول سمعت عمر بن الخطاب رضي الله عنه على المنبر قال سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم يقول. So the matan gives us the chain of narrations, and it normally has names of those narrators: Al-Humaydi, Sufyan, Yahya, Muhammad bin Ibrahim al-Taymi, Alqama, and Umar ibn Khattab radiyallahu anhu. And then it goes to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then the matan is the content of the hadith. The matan is the words or the actions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So a hadith has two main components to it, two main parts, a sanad and a matan. And these are primary concepts that we should keep in our minds as we go over, as we get deeper and deeper into this science, inshallah. And over here we have a translation of the hadith, which reads in Arabic, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ وَإِنَّمَا لِكُلِّ امْرِئٍ مَّا نَوَى فَمَنْ كَانَتْ هِجْرَتُهُ إِلَى الدُّنْيَا يُصِيبُهَا أو إلى امرأة ينكحها فهجرته إلى ما هاجر إليه. I heard Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam say, the reward of deeds depends upon the intentions, and every person will get the reward according to what he has intended. So whoever immigrated for worldly benefits or for a woman to marry, his immigration was for what he immigrated for. So that's the meaning of the matan, the hadith. Now I'd like us to think of the following questions. So first of all, this is the very first hadith found in Sahih al-Bukhari. As you can see over here, the reference is Sahih al-Bukhari in book reference, book 1, hadith 1. So this is the very first hadith in Sahih al-Bukhari. And I'd like us to think of this question. How did Imam al-Bukhari come to the conclusion that this hadith is Sahih? As we probably know, Imam al-Bukhari wrote Sahih al-Bukhari with the intention of collecting authentic narrations, Sahih narrations within this book. So that means that Imam al-Bukhari, first, when he came across a hadith, he first And so when Imam al-Bukhari came across a hadith, he first asked himself, is this hadith sahih before I can include it in my book? If the answer was yes, he would put it in his book. If the answer was no, he wouldn't include it in his book. So that means that he had a criterion in deciphering sahih ahadith from non-sahih ahadith. So I'd like us to think of this question. And we don't need to think of an answer right now, but inshallah, as we go over the slides, we're going to get hints and answers to this question. So how did Imam al-Bukhari come to the conclusion that this hadith is sahih? And the second question is, what does it mean for a hadith to be sahih? So these are two questions that we can keep in our minds. Okay. So what are the sciences of hadith all about? You know, every field of study has something that they're focusing on and analyzing. So you could think of, for example, that every subject, every field of study has something beneath the lens of their microscope. You know, a light microscope which has lenses. And there's normally, you can place items beneath the lenses where you now look at them closely with high resolution. So you can think of every subject having something specific beneath the lens of the microscope. When it comes to biology, it would be living organisms. When it comes to economics, it would be the economy. When it comes to accounting, it would be recording the transactions of businesses. There's always something that each field of study focuses on and tries to analyze as much as possible. So what is the thing beneath the light microscope of ulum al-hadith, of the sciences of a hadith? A hadith is a report about the actions, sayings, and tacit approvals of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So an important word is report. A hadith is a report. It's telling us about the actions, sayings, and approvals of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, the sciences of hadith are essentially tools that assist us in inquiring the historical veracity of the reports about the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Key ideas: historical inquiry, reports from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So a hadith is a report that tells us about something that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did or said. Now, ulum al-hadith contains tools that assist us in evaluating the historical accuracy of those reports. And the idea historical is important because when we're doing ulum al-hadith, we are basically doing history. We're basically doing history because we are going back into time and wanting to know fact from fiction. We want to know what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam really did and what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam really said, and separate the chaff from the rice, to separate fabricated ahadith from more rigorously attested ahadith. So when we're doing ulum al-hadith, we're doing history. And we are looking at the historical veracity of reports about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So on one hand, you have the reports, which are ahadith, and on the other hand, you have the tools within the toolbox of ulum al-hadith that indicate to us how authentic or how confident can we be in these reports in telling us about the past, about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So that's the idea over here: reports and historical inquiry. Put simply, ulum al-hadith, or the sciences of hadith, the word ulum in Arabic translates to sciences. Put simply, ulum al-hadith, the sciences of hadith, assist us in answering the historical question: did the Prophet ﷺ say or do that? We're asking a question. Did Rasulullah ﷺ say that? Now, I can't go back into the past to answer this question. There's no time machine that allows me to time travel into the past and to make sure and to verify whether Rasulullah ﷺ said or did something. But the closest that I could get to time travel would be the sciences of hadith, ulum al-hadith, the tools that have been constructed by the ulama of hadith in verifying reports about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So right now, as we are in this present moment, the tools that we have are ulum al-hadith in answering this historical question. Now I'd like us to spend some time in this mind map or this diagram. And this is a very helpful diagram that in 2 years ago, one of our lecturers at Medina Institute, the lecturer who was teaching us ulum al-hadith, shared with us several documents. And one of those documents was this diagram. And this diagram is very helpful because it's like a mind map of the different sciences within ulum al-hadith. So it gives us a good idea or a good introduction to the numerous sciences of hadith. Now, I don't want us to go deep into this mind map or this diagram right now. However, later on, we're going to come back to it once we have spoken about more ideas and concepts. And once we've gone over those concepts and we come back to this diagram, I think we'll have a better understanding, and the contents of this diagram will become more revealed to us, inshallah, later on in this slide presentation. However, I would like to look at a few things. The first thing is that it says it divides the sciences of hadith, ulum al-hadith, into two major categories, ulum al-sanad and ulum al-matan. Ulum al-sanad means the sciences of the chain of transmission, while ulum al-matan means the sciences of the content of the hadith. And as previously mentioned in the beginning of the presentation, we made the distinction between a sanad and a matan, these two being the main components of a hadith. Now that these two ideas come back again, sanad and matan. Let's go back. So now you have sciences that focus on the sanad, you know, the chain of narration, while you have sciences that focus on the content of the hadith, explaining to us what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam meant in the hadith. And you can see over here that the ulum al-sanad consists of many other sciences. You have al-jarh wa ta'dil, you have takhrij al-hadith, you have al-mustalah, you have al-ilal, you have al-saqat wal-ittisal, and you have manahij al-muhaddithin. But I would like us to focus on one of them, al-mustalah. Al-mustalah would be a good, it's like a gateway to the other ulum of hadith. Through mustalah, you'll come to get an idea of al-jarh wa-ta'dil, takhrij al-hadith, al-ilal, al-saqat, and manahij al-muhaddithin, inshallah. So for this reason, I would like us to start with al-mustalah, just to briefly look into some of the main ideas within the science of al-mustalah, mustalah al-hadith. So let's focus on one science, mustalah al-hadith. علم المصطلح. So here are a few things that we should know about this science of hadith, or this science called mustalah al-hadith. Mustalah al-hadith. The word mustalah means a term or terminology. And the idea that you get from the title of this subject is that this subject looks at the terminologies used by the scholars of hadith whenever they're talking about a hadith. So you could think of this subject as simply as a list of terminologies and their definitions. A list of terminologies and their definitions. However, let's get a deeper definition of this science. هو علم بأصول وقواعد يعرف بها أحوال السند والمتن من حيث القبول والرد. So the definition of Mustalah al-Hadith is that it is a science with a set of principles and rules that allow the discernment of the state of a report's chain of transmission, its sanad, and its contents, its matan, which leads to either accepting or rejecting given reports. So Mustalah al-Hadith teaches us how we should investigate a sanad and a matan, so that at the end of our investigation, we can either accept that report or reject that report. By accepting and rejecting, what is meant is that by accepting, it means that it can be attributed to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam with a good level of confidence. While rejecting a report means that you're not rejecting the words of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You're simply saying that because of the chain of this narration, or because of something within the matan of this hadith, so there's something that's indicating to me that I cannot believe this came from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Maybe there might be a liar within the chain of the narration. And if a liar tells you about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if someone who is known to have lied or who was accused of lying tells you of something about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you'll always doubt whether what they're telling you is true. So in that sense, that's what is meant by rejecting a report. You don't have confidence in attributing this statement or this action to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then goes on to say mawdu'uhu. And so what is its subject matter? Or what is the thing, as we spoke previously, using a metaphorical idea of that every science has something beneath the lens of its microscope. Every field of study is focusing and analyzing a particular thing in high resolution. So what is that thing that is beneath the lens of the microscope of ulum al-hadith or of mustalah al-hadith? It is the sanad and the matan, min hayth al-qabul wal-rad. Whether which will either lead to us accepting the hadith or rejecting it. So remember that the subject matter of ilm al-mustalah is the sanad and the matan. And again, these two concepts are appearing here. Sanad and matan. These are quite the primary concepts that we should know of a hadith. And then thamaratuhu. What is the benefit of studying ilm al-mustalah? The benefit, as you might guess by now, is we obtain the skills that assist us in differentiating authentic ahadith from inauthentic ahadith, or from by ahadith that cannot be clearly attributed to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, da'if ahadith. So the benefit of this science is that you get a particular skill. And what is this skill? The skill is تمييز الصحيح من السقيم من الأحاديث. This is the skill that allows us to differentiate from sahih ahadith from non-sahih ahadith. So this is I think this is a good introduction to ilm al-mustalah, one of the sciences of hadith. Okay. A hadith found in one of the books of hadith collections, for example, Sahih al-Bukhari, is like a finished product from a factory, while the sciences of hadith explain to us the processes within the factory that give rise to the finished product. So, books like Sahih al-Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, Jami' al-Tirmidhi, and the other books of hadith collections are the finished product of ulum al-hadith. And as I mentioned earlier on in this period, Imam al-Bukhari had the intention of collecting sahih ahadith, only sahih ahadith in his book Sahih al-Bukhari. So what that means is that when Imam al-Bukhari came across a hadith, he had to first ask himself, is this hadith sahih? If it is, he would include it within his book. If it isn't, he wouldn't include it within his book. But also an important point to just mention is that Imam al-Bukhari himself mentions that he did not include all sahih ahadith in his book. His book doesn't exhaust all sahih ahadith that exist, but he only has a portion of those sahih and hadith. And you'll get more sahih ahadith in other works of hadith collections, like Sahih Muslim, like Sahih Ibn Khuzaymah, Sahih Ibn Hibban. These are other sahih works which collect sahih ahadith. The Mustadrak of Al-Hakim. Those are other books that have collected ahadith which are sahih. So Imam al-Bukhari did not exhaust all sahih ahadith in his book. However, just to go back in the thought process, Imam al-Bukhari would ask himself, is this hadith sahih? If it is, he would include it in his book. If it wasn't sahih, he wouldn't include it in his book. So that means that Imam al-Bukhari must have had a criterion or a method in judging whether a hadith is sahih or not. And that this method was operating within his mind as he would come across a hadith. And he would place judgments on a hadith, and if they were sahih, he would include it within his book. So that's how we should think of ulum al-hadith. That ulum al-hadith, especially ulum al-sanad, the sciences of the chain of transmission, are the processes within the factory. Like the raw materials being put into the conveyor belt, whatever it is, and then the product gets transformed from one stage to another stage. And then at the very end, when you get the final product, that's the same as a hadith in one of the hadith collections. So that's one helpful way of thinking of ulum al-hadith and hadith. Now, I would like us to move to two important types of a hadith. We've previously mentioned two components of a hadith, which are the sanad and the matan. But now we're going to look at two distinct types of a hadith. So we're not looking into the internal structure of a hadith. We're not just looking at two different types of a hadith, mutawatir and ahad. A mutawatir hadith is a mass transmitted report, which means a large number of people narrated this report such that conventional experience shows collusion upon a lie to be impossible. On the other hand, a ahad hadith is a solitary report that falls short from being mutawatir. Okay, so a mutawatir hadith is a hadith where many people narrated from many people. That in each stage of the chain, there were lots of people who had narrated the hadith or the report. And an example that I like to use to make myself understand and others also to understand is that I did high school in a boarding school. So I was part of a boarding school. And so think of this situation. Imagine you're sitting in your cubicle or in the dormitory, and then someone comes to you and says, your father is at the reception. Your father has come and visit you, has come to visit you. So one person comes to you and says, I've seen your father, he's at the reception, he's come to visit you. Now, you could easily say, how does this person know my father? And maybe this person saw someone else's father and he mistook that person's father for my father. So maybe they're just confused. I'm not going to act upon this one narration from this person. Then another person comes who might be, so the first person that comes to you might be your best friend. Then another person comes who might be a classmate of yours and says, look, I've seen your father, he's at the reception. Okay, and then you start to think, okay, you start to consider this narration, this report. And then another person comes, maybe even from a different class, and then another person comes, and another person. Then in the next 20 minutes, 7 people or 10 people have come and told you that your father is at the reception. By the time you've reached the 10th person, you would have no doubt that it is true that your father is at the reception. This is what a mutawatir hadith, this is what the idea of a mutawatir hadith is. It's a hadith that many people report to you a particular thing, and because there's so many of them, it's highly unlikely for them to have all come together and to collude upon a lie. That's an important part in the definition of a mutawatir. That conventional experience shows collusion upon a lie to be impossible. That it is quite unlikely. When I look at the people who came and told me that my father is at the reception, some of them don't know each other. Some of them might be 2 years lower than me. Some of them might be a year ahead of me. Some of them might be my close friends. So there are people who do not know each other. And because they are not well acquainted with each other, I would think to myself that it's highly unlikely or even impossible for them to have worked together and say, look, let's prank Abdullah. Look, let's go one by one to him and let's tell him that his father is at the reception. And they come and then pull this prank on me. You know, so because it's very unlikely for them to have done something like that, then I have confidence in this narration, a mutawatir hadith. Now, a ahad hadith is one where not many people have narrated it to you. So maybe just 2 people come to you and tell you, look, your father is at the reception. That's the difference between a ahad and a mutawatir. A ahad hadith is simply a hadith that falls short from being mutawatir. Once a hadith has been shown to be widely transmitted, i.e. is mutawatir, it is automatically judged to be authentic with no further investigation needed. However, in the case of a ahad hadith, further investigation is needed to discern whether it is authentic. Much of ulum al-hadith is about this, figuring out if a solitary report is authentic, especially since an overwhelming majority of ahadith are solitary reports. Okay, so once you have deemed a hadith to be mutawatir, once a report has reached to you with numerous chains of transmission, and Imam as-Suyuti gives the limit, the lower limit of a mutawatir hadith to be 10 people. 10 people in each generation, in each part of the hadith, in each part of the sanad. So if 10 people in each generation report a particular hadith, then it's mutawatir, and you don't even need to look into those people. The fact that many people have spoken about the same thing makes us conclude that this hadith is authentic. But when a hadith falls short from being mutawatir, when not many people have narrated it, then we need to do further investigations to discern whether it's authentic or not. We need to put this particular hadith, this ahad hadith, through a test. And once it has succeeded in this test, then we can say it is sahih. And this is one of the main ideas of ulum al-hadith. A lot of ulum al-hadith would surround this area of concern. Yes. I would like to quote to you a statement from the great scholar from the time of the Salaf, Abdullah ibn al-Mubarak, a great scholar of hadith and a imam in Zuhd. He says, al-isnad min ad-din, walawla al-isnad laqala man sha'a ma sha'a. Isnad, which translates to chains of transmission, is part of the religion. And without them, anyone would say whatever they wanted to say. The sanad, the chain of transmission, plays a vital role within Islam. And through the chain of narration, people can say things with authority or without authority. That you cannot say something, especially when attributing a statement to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, without a chain. You have to say, okay, tell me, where did you get this hadith from? Okay, this person told you that. Okay, where did that person get that hadith from? That other person, and then goes until it goes back to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this idea of the isnad tradition plays a very important like regulatory or verifying role within Islam. And this is the idea behind the tests that we need to place upon a ahad hadith. As previously mentioned, a mutawatir hadith is automatically authentic. But for a ahad hadith, you need to do further investigations. You need to make this hadith go through a test to discern whether it's authentic or not. Now, the idea behind those tests can be found within this statement. It's about looking at the isnad. Al-isnad min ad-din. وَلَوْلَا الْإِسْنَادِ لَقَالَ مَنْ شَاءَ مَا شَاءَ. From Ibn al-Mubarak. Okay. What is the test that we're talking about in discerning whether a hadith is not authentic? That test is encapsulated in the concept of shurut sihhat al-hadith al-khamsa, the 5 conditions for an authentic hadith. I believe that this is the most important idea within mustalah al-hadith, or even in general within ulum al-hadith, that the 5 conditions for an authentic hadith shapes a lot of ulum al-hadith. It plays a very important role in ulum al-hadith. I would say, yes? Okay. Yes, plays an important role within علوم الحديث. حجة الإسلام al-Ghazali mentions that in Usul al-Fiqh, the most important section of Usul al-Fiqh is the section titled Dalalatul al-Alfaz. It is the section that looks at how words indicate to their meanings. And Usul al-Fiqh is translated as legal theory. Usul al-Fiqh is the subject where it gives you the principles that you need to use in deducing legal judgments or legal rulings from the Quran and the Hadith. And within this subject, the most important section, Imam Ghazali calls it the Umda. And Umda means the pillar, like the central pillar of this subject is Dalalatul Alfaz. It is the section that looks at how words indicate to their meanings. And that makes sense because Usul al-Fiqh is about deducing legal rulings from the Quran and Ahadith. And the Quran and Ahadith are in Arabic. They are words. They have language. So for you to deduce a legal ruling, you need to know how language works. You need to know how words indicate to their meanings. So in a similar fashion, we could say that the umda of Mustalah al-Hadith or of Ulum al-Hadith is this, the 5 conditions for an authentic hadith. So what are those 5 conditions? The 5 conditions for an authentic hadith are connected sanad, ittisal sanad. All narrators must be trustworthy, thubut al-adala. All narrators must be accurate in narrating the hadith. ثبوت الضبط. Absence of any anomalies, عدم الشذوذ. Absence of any defects, عدم العلل. Those are the 5 conditions for authentic hadith. The sanad, which we've spoken about, the sanad, which has the chains of the narrators, from one narrator to the other narrator to the other narrator to the next narrator to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That chain of narration, that sanad must be connected, and we'll see what is meant by the sanad being connected. Again, the sanad, which is a chain of narrators, has narrators in it. One narrator to another narrator to another narrator. So all the narrators within that sanad must be trustworthy individuals. They must be individuals who had taqwa and who are known for the level of integrity that they possessed. Again, about the narrators, all narrators must be accurate in narrating the hadith, meaning they must be known to have good memories. Or if they wrote down the hadith in a piece of paper or in a book, they must be known to be people who protect their books. That they don't just leave their books hanging and then someone else comes and then distorts the hadith. So they must be people of good memory or people who preserve the books where they write down a hadith. And then absence of any anomalies, we're going to look into that. And then absence of any defects. Similar, ilal and shudud are different ideas, but a bit similar. But something that I'd like to mention now is that I'm not going to go much into absence of any defects. And I'll explain to you why once we get to that slide, inshallah. So now what I would like us to do is to get a brief idea of each one of these conditions. And so remember that we're now looking at how to authenticate a ahad hadith. Connected chain, ittisal sanad. A chain is connected when all its narrators met and heard the hadith directly from the person they narrated from. Okay, so let's look at this chain of narration. Ibn Sirin, rahimahullah, must have physically met Abida and must have heard the hadith from Abida. And Abida, rahimahullah, must have physically met and heard a hadith from Ali karamallahu wajha. Then Imam Ali karamallahu wajha must have physically met and heard the hadith from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That is what is meant by the chain being connected. And there's an equation over here that al-ittisal is the Arabic word for connected, being connected, connectedness or connection. Al-ittisal is equal to al-mu'asara plus al-liqa plus al-sama'. Al-mu'asara means that you must be contemporaries with the person that you're narrating from. So Ibn Sirin must be a contemporary of Abida. But being a contemporary is not enough. You must be a contemporary, but also have met them physically. But again, meeting them physically isn't enough. You must have been a contemporary, met them physically, and also heard that particular hadith that you're narrating from them. You must have heard that hadith directly from them. And this shows like how rigorous the scholars of hadith were in authenticating a hadith, in making sure that the reports that we have about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam are as authentic as possible. That being a mu'asir is not enough. Being a contemporary isn't enough. I'll give you an example of where someone is a mu'asir with another person, but has not met them, nor hasn't heard a hadith from them. Take, for example, someone like me and Sheikh Hamza Yusuf. Sheikh Hamza Yusuf and I are both contemporaries. In fact, we're all contemporaries. We're all contemporaries with each other, meaning that we're living in the same time. In other words, I am alive while they're alive, but I haven't met him. So if I were to say that Sheikh Hamza Yusuf says XYZ, my chain wouldn't be connected because I haven't met him, nor have I heard a particular hadith or this narration from him directly. So it's a disconnected chain. And I must have heard, and what a disconnected chain means is that, let's say Ibn Sirin did not meet Abida, and then Ibn Sirin says that Abida said X. Now, since Ibn Sirin did not meet Abida, Ibn Sirin must have heard from someone else who told him that Abida told them X, about X. So the problem with a disconnected chain is that there's always, there must be an individual within the chain who has been omitted in the chain. There must be someone there that we don't know who they are. We don't know if they're a reliable narrator. So that's the issue with a disconnected chain. So the idea is that a connected chain is one where you're contemporaries with the person that you're narrating from, and you've met them physically, and you've heard the hadith directly from them. Let's move to Thubutul Adala. Okay, we have 5 more minutes, and then I would like us to go for a 20-minute break from 10 to 10 to 10 past 10. And then inshallah, from 10 past 10 till 11, I hope you're going to be finished with the entire presentation, inshallah. Now, the next quality or the next condition for a authentic hadith: a trustworthy narrator. Thubut al-adala. A narrator is considered to possess integrity and trustworthiness if they fulfill the following conditions. Now, there are several conditions for a narrator to be considered trustworthy. And some of the basic ones would be, they must be a mature person, and they must also have a sound intellect. You know, those are like the basics. And however, these are 2 helpful conditions in evaluating the trustworthiness, the integrity of a narrator. The first one is they never commit grave sins such as zina, nor persist in minor sins. So if a narrator commits a grave sin or is persistent in committing a minor sin, this will take his integrity will take a hit. And the second condition is they do not violate muru'ah, such as eating in public spaces, although social norms are dependent on what society deems as acceptable. Yeah, so the muru'ah is the idea of social norms, that they are not people who violate the social norms. You know, for example, I think an example of a violation of a social norm today might be urinating at the edge of a street, or urinating on a wall. Although you're hiding yourself, but doing it publicly is something very, very contemptible. Yeah. And someone who violates a social norm will not be considered to be idle, will not be considered to be a trustworthy narrator. So we've looked at 2 out of the 5 conditions for a authentic hadith. The chain must be connected and all the narrators must be trustworthy. Then the next one will be looking at the accuracy of the narrators. And then we're going to look at عدم الشذوذ, the absence of any anomalies. And then the last one will be absence of any defects. And I would like us, inshallah, to go for something like a 20-minute break, inshallah, and be back at around 10 past 10, because it's quite early and it's a weekend, so maybe we can spend this time having breakfast or something similar, inshallah. So assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. See you later, inshallah.